So one of the things that I've been struck by over the last month and a half is how little I actually know. Now, of course, that was true before the last month and a half, but specifically, I've been reminded through the COVID-19 outbreak that there is very little that I know. For example, I don't know why it is that we're going through what we are going through currently. I don't know why it is that certain people are affected more disproportionately than others. I don't know why certain parts of the world or certain parts of our country, even certain parts of Nebraska, are more affected than other parts. I don't know the answers to any of those questions. I also don't know how it is that we can best balance our need for health safety along with our need for financial stability and our need to protect our liberties. I don't know how to do any of those things. Now, I have opinions on all of those things. I have opinions about maybe why certain things are happening or the best policies going forward. But at the end of the day, I need to be willing to acknowledge I just don't know. And the fact is, no matter who we trot out, no matter what experts we point to on television, we have to acknowledge that their knowledge is also limited. They may have a better idea of these issues than I do, but they still have a very small grasp of what's actually going on. Because the fact is, as humans, our knowledge together, collectively, is extraordinarily limited. As Christians, this is not surprising to us because the Bible repeatedly tells us that yes, it's true that we have small and finite knowledge. God does not. He knows all things. In fact, his wisdom is unsearchable. But us, we are very small and limited in our knowledge. I think it's important that we remember that in the days to come, and here's why. I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of divergent opinions on what we should do going forward. And in those moments, there'll be a temptation for us to want to stand in judgment over others and think, how could they possibly think this? How could they think that this is the best course going forward, when in reality, we think this is the best course going forward? In those moments, we need to remember that we have very small knowledge, and what we think may be best may not actually be what's best. I think that's particularly true and particularly important for the church. We need to remember that there's going to be a wide variety of opinions on what we should do going forward. But we need to be humble enough to acknowledge we don't know everything. And we need to be humble enough to acknowledge that we shouldn't stand in judgment over others just because they disagree with us. This seems to be the issue that Paul is addressing in Romans chapter 14, albeit in a much different context. In Romans 14, Paul is encouraging the Christians there not to quarrel over differences in conviction or to stand in judgment over other Christians because they have different convictions on certain things. Now, in that Romans 14 passage, Paul's not talking about black and white things in Scripture, and I'm not either. If, for example, a brother or sister in the church thinks they need to rob a bank to get back financially healthy, we would say, well, of course not. That's silly. But when we're talking about different opinions here, we're talking about different courses of action where someone thinks we need to be more conservative or someone else thinks we need to be more aggressive, we need to be willing to acknowledge that we don't know everything and there's room for differences of opinion. And it's important that during this time, we don't disagree and come to quarrels or come to the point where we're knocking heads over these issues and forget that our actual unity comes from knowing Jesus. We are to be unified because Christ unites us. And so in the days going forward, I think it's important for us to remember that we don't know all things and there's going to be room for disagreement. Some people, even in the church, may think we should do this, or others may think we should do that. And that's okay. There's a lot that we don't know. We're all trying to do our best. Even the experts are trying to do their best, or at least we hope they are. And at the end of the day, we have to say our knowledge is very limited. And because of that, we should have humility. But also because of that, we should be quick to point to the one who does have all knowledge. Rather than putting our trust in those with finite knowledge, we should look to the one who has infinite knowledge. And we should point others to that one who knows all things too. The fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, it doesn't do any good for us to rest in our own knowledge, but instead, we must point to the one who has all knowledge. We must look to God. So church, in the days to come, let's be humble enough to admit we don't know everything. And because of that, there may be some differences of opinion that we see in the coming days. But let's also remember that there is one who knows all things, and he is the one that unites us.